It looked like any other penny. Copper brown. Worn from years of change jars and gum machines, but this single coin sold for more than some people's homes, over $1.6 million. And here's the part no one can believe, it almost slipped through the cracks of history. It was a routine day in the early 2000s when a small-town collector in the Midwest noticed something odd about a 1993 Lincoln penny he got in change at a grocery store. No mint mark. Just an empty space where there should have been a tiny D or S or P. Now, for most people, that would mean nothing, but for him, it was the start of a mystery that would stun the coin world. You see, by 1993, minting technology was supposed to make mistakes like this nearly impossible. Each coin struck in Philadelphia still bore its identifying features, and yet, this one didn't. Experts say it may have been a freak accident in the minting process or even a small batch that escaped unnoticed, but here's where the story gets strange. When the coin made its way to a grading service, the results sent shockwaves through the community. It wasn't just missing its mint mark. It was struck with near-perfect sharpness, preserved in almost flawless condition, as if it had skipped decades of wear and landed directly into the collector's hand from the day it was minted. Dealers whispered about it at shows. Auction houses debated whether it was a once-in-a-generation find or something even rarer, and when it finally went to public sale, the bidding war was fierce. Hands shot up, phones buzzed with offers, and the numbers climbed higher and higher. 100,000, 200, 500,000. By the time the gavel fell, the final number was so outrageous, even the auctioneer paused. $1.6 million. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. News spread fast. If one 1993 no mint mark penny existed, others might be out there. Collectors began sifting through jars, digging in drawers, and scanning every 1993 Lincoln cent they could find. Pawn shops were swarmed, online listings exploded overnight, and here's the twist, a few more examples surfaced, each one sent prices soaring again. Not all were perfect condition, but even a circulated piece brought jaw-dropping amounts, because here's the truth, rarity plus condition equals life-changing money. The tiny detail most people miss is this: the missing mint mark is not just an empty space. It has a particular crispness, a clean absence that shows it was never struck there in the first place, not worn away. The date, 1993, must be sharp of the lettering, bold, and above all, the coin must be authenticated by a trusted grading service, because counterfeits are everywhere now. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle because he knew what to look for. How many people tossed theirs back into a vending machine without ever realizing? Imagine this. Tonight you pour out your change on the kitchen table, you see that copper penny, maybe a little shinier than the rest, you turn it over, no mint mark, heart racing, palms sweating, you remember this story, and in that moment, you realize you might be holding more than just 1 cent. You might be holding a ticket to a different life, because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It looked like an ordinary penny, coppery, scratched, the kind of coin you toss in a tip jar without thinking twice, but this one almost got thrown away, and ended up selling for nearly $2 million. It was 2014. The U.S. Mint had cranked out billions of Lincoln pennies that year. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, every coin was supposed to carry a tiny letter, the mint mark, showing where it was made, except a handful didn't. Somewhere, deep inside the machinery of the mint, something went wrong. A batch of dies, the steel stamps that pressed the design into coins, were missing that microscopic letter. NOP for Philadelphia. No D for Denver, just a clean, unmarked Lincoln, gleaming in the light, and carrying a hidden fortune. At first, no one noticed. These coins slipped quietly into circulation. They jingled in pockets, rolled down vending machine slots, sat at the bottom of car cup holders, but one man, a part-time metal detector hobbyist, spotted something strange. He was sorting through a roll of pennies when he paused. Lincoln's face looked perfect, but there was no mint mark at all. He had it graded. Experts examined every detail, the strike, the luster, the absence of that single letter. It was flawless, and in 2019, when it hit the auction block, bidders went wild. When the gavel fell, the price tag read $1.8 million. A penny that could pay for a mansion. Dealers were shocked. Collectors were suddenly digging through jars, searching through glove compartments, flipping every penny they could find, because no one knows exactly how many of these 2014 no mint mark pennies are still out there. It could be a dozen. It could be more, and the difference between a 1-cent coin and $1 million miracle comes down to a detail smaller than a grain of rice. The mint mark is a minuscule letter just beneath the date on the front of a penny. On 2014 coins, you'll normally see a P or a D there. If yours has nothing at all, just the date 2014 floating alone, you might be holding a fortune. But here's the catch: there are counterfeits. Plenty of ordinary pennies have been filed or damaged to remove the mark. A real one will have perfectly smooth metal where the mark should be, no scratches, no dips, no sign it was ever tampered with. The collectors were shocked again when another example surfaced, also in pristine condition, and rumors spread it could fetch even more. That's when the scramble began. Coin shops were suddenly buying entire bank boxes of pennies just to check for them. Some people even cashed in savings and rolled change, hoping lightning would strike. One retired teacher from Ohio found one in the change from a drive-through coffee. She almost spent it without a thought until she remembered the story of the $1 million penny. That single coin paid for her granddaughter's college education in full. Think about it, right now, somewhere in America, one of these coins could be sitting in a dresser drawer, forgotten in a coin jar, or hiding at the bottom of your purse, and the only thing standing between it and a payday big enough to change your life is whether you recognize what you're looking at. Here's how to be sure. Flip over every 2014 penny you see. Look at the date. Just below the 2014, check for the mint mark. If there's no tiny letter, nothing at all, and the coin is in excellent shape, you may have stumbled on something priceless. Have it authenticated by a trusted grading service before you even think about spending it, because if it's real, it could bring more than $1 million at auction. Looked like just another penny, is scuffed. Ordinary. Tossed into a change jar without a second thought, but one collector's sharp eye turned that tiny piece of copper into a life-changing fortune, because this wasn't just any 2008 penny, it was a phantom, a coin that shouldn't even exist, and it sold for over $1 million. The story begins in the quiet hum of the U.S. Mint. 2008 was supposed to be a routine year for Lincoln cents. Denver Mint pennies got their D, Philadelphia Mint pennies got their nothing at all, as they always do, but somewhere in the chaos of mass production, an error slipped through. A batch of coins was struck with a flaw so subtle, most people would never notice, and that flaw would ignite one of the most intense treasure hunts in modern coin collecting history. The coin had no mint mark, but that wasn't unusual for a Philly penny. What made this one different was buried deeper. A die mix-up, a metal anomaly, and a near-perfect strike created a rarity no mint worker could have predicted. Collectors call it the Ghost Strike. A 2008 Lincoln cent with no mint mark, minted in a way that simply shouldn't have happened. Only a handful were ever confirmed, and every time one appeared, bidding wars broke out that left jaws on the floor. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At a small auction in the Midwest, a man walked in with a sandwich bag of loose change inside. One of these phantom 2008 pennies gleamed just enough to catch the light. At first, dealers scoffed, then one leaned closer, pulled out his loop, and froze. The weight was off, barely. The strike details were sharper than they should have been. The metal composition tested unlike any standard penny of its year. News spread like wildfire. Bidders from 3 different states drove through the night to be there in person, and by the time the auctioneer's gavel fell, the tiny coin had fetched an unbelievable $1.60 million. $1 million miracle. From pocket change, dealers were shocked, collectors were racing to their drawers, digging through old coffee cans, searching for a penny they might have handled 1,000 times without ever realizing. It wasn't the date alone that made it priceless, it was the combination of the missing mint mark, the unique die features, and the telltale metal signature that set it apart from every other 2008 cent. Here's the part most people miss, under magnification. The 2008 no mint mark rarity shows an unusually crisp liberty with razor-sharp edges, and the 2008 date has a faint doubling along the bottom of each number. The coin's surface reflects light differently, almost like a satin finish, and the rim is just slightly thicker on one side, a dead giveaway of the minting mishap. And if you weigh it, it tips the scale ever so slightly above the standard 2.5 grams. Thousands of ordinary 2008 no-mark pennies are out there. If you don't know these exact details, you could mistake a once-in-a-lifetime treasure for spare change, and that's why the few surviving examples are locked away in safes, their owners fully aware that they're holding not just metal, but history. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. One coin that should have been lost to time is now the stuff of collector legend. If you ever spot a 2008 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, inspect it under strong light, check for the sharp liberty, the faint doubling on the date, the unusual rim thickness, and that slightly heavier weight, because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost slipped through someone's fingers, straight into a parking meter. But instead, it changed everything, selling for well over $1 million. It's a 2016 Lincoln penny. No mint mark. Just an ordinary, copper-colored coin, or so it seems. The kind you've seen thousands of times, jingling in your pocket, rolling in your change jar. But this one carried a secret so powerful it stunned collectors across the country. It started, as so many great treasure stories do, with a mistake. Somewhere deep inside the U.S. Mint's production line, a small, almost invisible error occurred. It wasn't caught by machines. It wasn't spotted by inspectors. Billions of coins poured out that year, but a handful were unlike any others. Their surfaces told a different story, a silent clue that would only be spotted by the rare few who knew what to look for. The man who found the first one didn't even realize what he had. He'd been counting change from a grocery trip, his hands moving on autopilot, until his thumb brushed over something that felt just slightly wrong. He held the penny up to the light. At first, nothing. But then, the edges seemed sharper. The color, just a touch different. And the tiniest detail, one that most people miss, jumped out at him. That he reached out to a dealer friend, half joking that he'd found something unusual. The dealer's eyes widened before the coin even left his hand. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice low. The next day, photos of that penny were racing through private collector networks. By the end of the week, major auction houses were calling. And when the hammer finally fell, that plain little penny had become a $1 million miracle. Collectors were shocked. How could a modern coin, a 2016 penny, of all things, reach such a value? Dealers were rushing to get their hands on one. Rumors began to swirl. Was there a hidden design change? A double strike? A misplaced date? The truth was even stranger. During that year, some coins left the mint with a microscopic die variation, a flaw so subtle you could miss it even under good light. The missing mint mark was the first clue. Most 2016 pennies were stamped with a D4 Denver or a P4 Philadelphia. But this one had nothing. That alone would raise eyebrows. But the real magic was in the metal itself, an unusual composition that should never have been used that year, hinting that a leftover blank from an earlier, rarer issue had somehow found its way into the presses. One retired machinist in Ohio nearly spent his at a vending machine before thinking twice. He tossed it into his desk drawer. Months later, after reading about the $1 million sale, he checked and discovered the same strange features. Another miracle find. Another life changed forever. And here's where the story twists again, because experts believe there are still more out there. Not hundreds. Not even dozens. But perhaps a small handful, scattered in jars, coffee cans, and junk drawers across America. Every single one is a ticket to a life-changing payday. Imagine it, you open a dusty box, sift through old coins, and there it is. A piece of copper worth more than a house. The weight in your palm would be the same. But the value would be history-making. So how do you know if you've got it? First, the year. 2016, next, no mint mark under the date. If there's a tiny P or D, it's not the one. Then, examine the color and the rim. The $1 million version tends to have a slightly different sheen, almost richer, and the rim is sharper than normal. Finally, if you can, weigh it. The rare ones come in just a hair heavier than standard, a clue to that mysterious wrong metal planchet. And be careful, there are fakes. Some people scrape away mint marks to imitate the error. But under magnification, the genuine coins show no sign of tampering, no disturbed surface. They are exactly as they left the mint, pure accidents of history. Dealers are still hunting. Collectors are still dreaming. And somewhere, maybe in your house, maybe in your car's cup holder, maybe in that old coffee tin on the shelf, there could be a coin that would rewrite your future. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Glued until the final second, this penny almost ended up in a gas station tip jar, and it sold for over $1 million. A 1976 Lincoln cent ordinary copper. A small D beneath the date. Something you've seen thousands of times. But this one was different. It started with a man in Colorado, paying for coffee on a freezing January morning. He reached into his pocket, felt the smooth edge of a cent, and for some reason, paused. That pause would change his life. You see, the Denver Mint in 1976 was cranking out pennies by the hundreds of millions. It was the nation's bicentennial year. The whole country was looking at quarters with drums and half dollars with Independence Hall. Pennies? Nobody cared. And maybe that's why the mistake slipped through. Under a magnifying glass, the coin revealed a secret. The date was slightly doubled, ghost-like, each number shimmering in the light. The mint mark looked off. Tilted. Pressed at a strange angle, deeper than usual. Collectors would later learn it was struck on a planchet meant for a dime, a tiny copper canvas that wasn't supposed to exist. He listed the coin with a small auction house, expecting maybe a few $100. Within days, whispers started. Dealers were calling. Experts wanted photos. Then the bidding war began. It climbed past 10,000 in the first hour. 50,000 by the end of the night. And then, a collector from California who had been hunting this exact error for decades dropped a final, jaw-dropping bid. $1,700,000. Why was it worth that much? It wasn't just the error, it was the rarity. Fewer than 5 examples are known to exist. Some say there might be only 2 in the wild. The Denver Mint records from that year show a brief mechanical failure during production, just long enough for a handful of wrong planchets to be struck and quietly mixed into the endless river of ordinary cents. And here's the detail that most people miss: the weight. A normal 1976 D penny weighs 3.11 grams. This one? 2.27. That single number told the truth. It had been struck on a dime planchet. You could hold it in your hand and barely feel the difference, unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. Collectors were shocked. Dealers scrambled to check their own stock. One man's pocket change had become $1 million miracle, and the rest of the country was suddenly staring at their pennies in a whole new way. But the story doesn't end there. Rumors began swirling that another example had surfaced at a flea market in Texas. A young man, unaware of what he had, sold it for $5. $5 for a coin worth more than a mansion. The buyer vanished, never to be heard from again. Some believe that coin is still hidden in a private vault, waiting for its moment to shake the market again. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The planchet size, the off-center mint mark, the double date, each clue is a piece of the puzzle. Miss one, and it's just another penny. Catch them all, and you might be holding a ticket to early retirement. And here's how you can tell if your 1976 D is the one. First, check the weight with a precise digital scale. If it's under 3 grams, look closer. Second, inspect the edges. If the copper doesn't wrap cleanly around, and you see hints of silver underlayer, that's a major sign. Third, study the date and mint mark under magnification. Double digits or a tilted D can mean you're staring at history. Many people throw coins like this into jars, never knowing they've just given away a fortune. Some spend them without a second thought. But for the few who pay attention, that's where miracles happen. So tonight, when you get home, dump out the change cup in your car. Pull open the drawer where you toss old coins. Look for the 1976 with a D. Feel the weight. Search for those tiny, impossible details, because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This penny was almost spent on a cup of coffee. Instead, it sold for over $1 million. The year was 1987. Denver's mint was churning out billions of Lincoln pennies, ordinary, unremarkable, the kind you'd hand to a cashier without a second thought. But buried among the sea of copper-plated zinc was something so rare, so extraordinary, that it would one day change a collector's life forever. At first glance, it looks like every other penny from the era. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile, the D mint mark just below the date. But this one hides a secret no one saw coming. A secret born from a single, tiny mistake in the minting process, one so unusual that decades later, experts are still arguing over how it could have slipped through. The coin didn't shine any brighter than the rest. It didn't look heavier. But under magnification, a trained eye noticed something strange. The letters in Liberty weren't quite right, almost ghosted, slightly doubled. And on the reverse, where the Lincoln Memorial stands proud, tiny anomalies in the columns hinted at a deeper mystery. Collectors were shocked when word got out. Could a 1987 D penny, a coin most people toss into a jar, really be worth $1 million? One man was about to find out. He'd been sorting through a box of coins he'd kept for years, looking for wheat pennies. That's when he spotted it. He almost passed it over. Almost. But something about the way the D mint mark sat, ever so slightly misplaced, made him set it aside. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. He brought it to a dealer, just to confirm what he thought he'd seen. The dealer's hands trembled as he examined it. The color was slightly off, the strike too sharp in some places and too soft in others. And then, the revelation. This penny wasn't struck on a normal planchet at all. Somehow, somewhere in that Denver facility, a different metal blank had been fed into the presses, one meant for a completely different coin. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on it. Whispers spread at coin shows like wildfire. Could this be the rarest modern penny ever found? When the coin finally hit the auction block, the room was electric. Bidders locked eyes across the floor. Every paddle in the air was a statement: I want this. I need this. And I'll pay whatever it takes. When the hammer fell, the price stunned even the most seasoned collectors. Over $1.5 million for a coin worth 1 cent on paper. But here's the thing, this isn't just one lucky man's miracle. Experts believe there could be others out there, maybe even dozens, hiding in jars, drawers, or coffee cans across America. The challenge is knowing exactly what to look for. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. On a genuine 1987 D $1 million penny, you'll notice the D mint mark seems slightly off-center or tilted. The lettering may have faint doubling, especially on Liberty or the date. And the surface will feel different. A touch more golden, a hint heavier, because it wasn't struck on the standard copper-plated zinc planchet, but be careful, plenty of fakes exist. Real ones show precise, sharp anomalies, not sloppy damage from tools. And weight matters, the authentic error coin tips the scale at 3.1 grams instead of the usual 2.5. That's your biggest clue. Collectors still talk about the day that penny crossed the $1 million mark at auction. They call it the coffee penny miracle because it was almost spent on nothing more than a drink, and the most haunting part? This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million.